Welcome back to Holistic Healing Association. Today, we'll be talking about embracing our soft heart, how to open our heart to compassion and love, to be able to receive support and love when we may be terrified to do so. I have with me my friend, colleague, and somatic practitioner, David. Hi, David. Thank you for joining us. And why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Thanks, Erin. Yes, I'm a spiritual author and blogger and a somatic practitioner.
And David, can you please tell us about your personal trauma story?
Well, I guess for me, it wasn't so much, when we say the word trauma, we might think of, a car accident or, getting hit or something like that. But that wasn't part of my childhood, but it was more a thing where my dad died when I was quite young, and my mother went to work to support myself and my older sisters. And so there wasn't a parent around so much, which is actually very common nowadays as well, with both parents working. Um, but we were largely left to ourselves to take care of ourselves. I mean, there was an adult around, but they were they weren't a nanny. They were a housekeeper taking care of, making some meals and cleaning the house and stuff. And so it was kind of a trauma by long-term neglect. Not not like it was ignored. My mother did make efforts to be there, but she'd often come home from work tired, as quite understandable. And and then for me, it got amplified because genetically I was a late bloomer, and so getting into elementary school and so forth. Around grade four-ish, I developed a need for glasses, and I developed buck teeth, and then began to be small for my age. By the time I hit grade nine, I was one of the smallest in a large school for my age. And so of course, there's a boys are very competitive about who's tough and who's strong and all that business. And there's a lot of what I kind of considered pointless jockeying for position on a kind of a pecking order. But that also socially isolated me some. I typically would have one really close friend, and which we'd hang out a lot. But that didn't do wonders for my self-confidence. It's more experiences after finishing grade school and having some success in the world, and where I recovered a lot of that. But what I found later on was that even though I had outgrown a lot of that stuff, the energetic residues, the emotional residues were still kind of there unconsciously. And the spiritual practices I had done smoothed off a lot of the reactivity that's kind of in there. One of the, you can get triggered by old stuff that you might not be conscious of, but something happens or someone says something and you kind of overreact to it, or the really strong emotion comes up disproportional to the situation. And that's a good sign there's something in there to be resolved. But I had smoothed a lot of that out through spiritual practices. And so what I wasn't aware of is underneath the reactivity is this deeper level of impressions from those early childhood experiences of not being good enough, or not being valued, um, not being heard, uh, that my opinion didn't count. And the dynamic in my family was that I had two older sisters, and we essentially were competing for my mother's attention. And being the youngest and such, I didn't win too many of those competitions. Um, And so, I didn't, recognize it as a big problem particularly, but I look back now and I can see how, there was periods of my life where I was quite challenged and kind of overshadowed. Like one of my ways of adapting was to live in my imagination when I was in early grade school. And so, on report cards would be frequently, the teacher would say, David would do much better in class if he paid more attention. But for me, it was safer to zone out and or to imagine stuff instead, pleasant places and things that were interesting to me, and so on. And so eventually, I became aware this stuff was still in there, and through some kind of funny experiences. But um, without getting into a long story, I met Matt, and he talked about the school where we studied. And so I took one of the free courses, and because I do some coaching, and they have a free course in trauma-informed coaching. And I had studied some about stress back in the 70s, but I discovered the science had evolved quite a bit further than I realized. The different types of, the polyvagal theory, they call it, the different types of stress responses we have. There's the fight or flight, but then sustained stress can go deeper in. So one of the things that happened was that with the pecking order thing was that people would try to establish who was the tougher. And so they would pick fights with random people. And so I would get people, announcing they were going to fight me after school. I didn't even know who they were. And, why am I fighting somebody I don't know? And there's nothing. And there's a there's a fight, and a big crowd would gather. There'd be like 40, 50 people.
Oh, wow, David.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm not going to fight this guy. I don't even know who he is. And it's like, this is completely meaningless. But then, of course,
So that's pretty severe.
yeah. So then I'm the chicken, because I don't fight. But, and it's different in different families. Another thing that happened for me was my mother decided I should be playing baseball, and she signed me up for a team. But then there's all these boys who have brothers and dads they would play ball with, so they knew how to actually throw a ball and hit a ball and stuff like that. I had no clue, and no practice at it. So I toss the ball around a little bit and throw a ball for the dog and stuff like that, but it's not the same thing. And so, I was kind of the guy off that they put out in right field because they were pretty, I was one of the lamer players on one of the lamer teams, which didn't actually help my confidence. And it's not even necessarily overt bullying. I mean, there's can be, the bullies that kind of push you down or steal your allowance and that kind of stuff. I didn't experience that very often, a few times, but not too often. It's more just that there's kind of like a lower level of bullying where it's just like you're being actively dismissed, and kids don't play with you because it's not cool to play with the whatever the buck teeth guy or the they're kind of like general shaming and stuff going on. Um, so it's kind of most of what I got was lower level. I did try and avoid fighting and that kind of stuff because it just like I said, it didn't make any sense to me. But um, but again, then you get labeled as the chicken and that kind of stuff. And so it's just one of those things. But yeah, as I got older, those kind of things became less important to people, and um, I actually became a little bit more cool because my
Well, David, I'll tell you guys, David is very cool.
well, I got braces, so my teeth got straightened, and glasses became progressively more common. Uh, I grew late, but I did grow eventually. I did actually grow. Most of my growing was actually after I graduated from high school. I was, let's see, 6 inches shorter than my height now when I graduated high school. Um, but by the time I got there, I was average height. Um, and I was a drummer in a rock band. So there was a bit more of a cool factor. I made a bunch of films too.
So you became cool.
well, I don't know if I was cool, but not quite so nerdy as I had
Okay.
been seen before.
Well, there's nothing wrong with nerds. Um, no, kids though, it can have a huge impact on them. I know people who have even struggled with addictions, and they say it's because of their traumatic time in school.
Yeah.
Um,
And even within my family, one of the things I realized in my 20s when I first had a serious relationship, introduced her to my family, was it highlighted the dynamics within my family. Me being the youngest, I was kind of talked over and that kind of stuff. And my then fiance brought it up, and my mother and sister were horrified when they realized that they were doing that. But it was just like this habit.
I
And
just don't even
so,
know.
so yeah, so then I could develop an adult relationship with them when it was because it became conscious for me too, because it's just like it's all habit, and so none of us sees it. But then, if we're actual adults, when it's pointed out, we can make adjustments and develop an adult relationship. So that was very helpful as well for me in family dynamics.
That's good. I know, yes, it has such an impact being bullied on people. I believe, I know personally, I didn't understand the depth it can have on people. Um,
Well, what surprised me too was I remember having, there would sometimes be a teacher or two that I really respected or I liked in some way. And then, like one guy called me Bugs Bunny. It's like, because I was buck teeth, right? It's like
yeah,
not what I expected. And it was interesting to reflect back because I realized that it was a disappointment. I didn't actually take it personally. It was in that instance because it was a teacher, but it was like, how can a teacher be so disrespectful?
the teacher called you that.
Yeah, the teacher said that. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Uh, and then
Yeah.
there was a
Actually,
situation.
now that you say that, actually in high school, because I was Christian, I had one teacher called me Noah. So that wasn't cool either. Because he was
Yeah.
making fun of me for being
Yeah,
Christian.
and he's an adult. I mean, he's surrounded by kids and that kind of thinking, perhaps, but
It's
still,
disrespectful.
there's a
Yeah.
standard you should try and reach for.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
Uh,
I know it, though I do believe if we really sit down and talk to the other person, not everyone, but I do believe it would have an impact on many. A lot less people marry experiences.
yeah,
And
it's interesting to see too, because I remember when we had a 25-year reunion. This is a long time ago now too, but we had a 25th reunion with my high school, and my math teacher came, and my math teacher that was one of my weak subjects, so I wasn't so popular with him because I was not a good math student.
that
But
surprises me. This guy's like a genius. How many multiple PhDs do you have?
well, that's now, I wasn't, I was more caught up in my trauma, I guess you could say, my emotions and stuff, that were all being suppressed, in those days. So yeah, I wasn't a great student then. I did better when I was making my own choices for what I was studying and so on. Much better. Anyways, yeah, I was a late bloomer with that too, though. Grad school in my 50s and, PhD in my 60s. It, it was late to the game there. But I remember at the reunion, this math teacher was a PhD in math and teaching in high school, and so he had a couple of students that were quite good and that he really liked, but most of us were not really his favorite. Anyways, he showed up and he was like, he'd grown his hair long and he was relaxed and and quite mellow, and he was really happy to see me and chat for a few minutes, find out about my life. So it's
That's cool.
yeah,
Yeah. And I know through sitting with people in sessions and doing a lot somatic training. It's really sitting down and hearing the person, and that when you sit down and you really listen to another person and really see, hear, and understand a person and just get to know them, even on a deeper level, but sometimes even on a basic level. I believe if kids did that, there may be less bullying. I know, for example, when I went camping in Algonquin Park, this is many years ago, I brought a boy who was like my little brother, who was a lot younger than me. And I was in the tent, and outside I heard him and another boy he met on the camping trip, making fun of another boy who seemed to be struggling physically. I'm not sure if the boys picked it up or not, but I came out and I told that boy to go home. And I told my friend he has to go apologize to him. Not only does he have to go apologize to him, he has to get to know who he was just making fun of. So I said, he has to go ask him to go kayaking with him. And he was very embarrassed, but I told him, you need to go do this. And he did. He apologized and he asked him to go kayaking. And now some kids, you can't do this because the other child is going to get attacked. This boy, I know he has a good heart. He went kayaking with him. He came back, he made a new friend. He said he's a nice kid. And I think if we do this and we meet each other and really hear and try and see the other person,
Yeah.
it can have a huge impact.
Yeah,
And
and the intellect naturally categorizes. And so there's this tendency for people to, when they meet someone or see someone, to automatically categorize them. So
exactly.
this kind of person. And we make all these assumptions about people without even realizing it. And sometimes they might be a bit right, but quite often it's just a complete oversimplification of who they are. It doesn't really represent them at all.
I agree. And the last year, I just wanted to touch base on this. I've been hearing a lot of critical talk from people of different spiritual backgrounds, about people of different spiritual backgrounds. And I believe people are not fully aware what they're doing, maybe, but it is discriminatory.
Yeah,
And
but it's very common in our culture, unfortunately. And there's just a whole, it's like a style of being, and that's kind of normal. And even like the news reflects it. If you listen to the news, you realize they're basically this litany of what's wrong and who's to blame. And really, it's not a particularly healthy approach. But there's a thing where they're looking for viewers, and they kind of target the lowest common denominator because that's what brings the most hits, and so they can charge more for advertising and blah 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 blah. But it's kind of it becomes kind of a race to the bottom in some ways, and it's really useful to become more conscious of how we're being.
we need to become more conscious, and we need to meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
Because the people you could be judging could actually be, if you knew them, could actually be a friend.
Yeah.
And you can learn a lot and grow when you sit down with people that are different than you and really listen to them. And, sometimes it can take you out of your comfort zone, but that's how you can also grow and learn. And there needs to be more unity and compassion and fellowship among all people. And during this series, we are going to be hearing people from very different walks of life and very different spiritual backgrounds. And I just encourage everyone to really listen to the person. What's your intake on that, David?
Yeah, I fully agree. I took a class at one point in what they call nonviolent communication, and they talk a lot about that kind of thing in that context, that where we listen and not assume and lay stuff on people when we're talking to them. And it really changes the dynamics and the energy of our communication.
Nonviolent communication is excellent. David is the one who got me on it. But yes, it is. It's recommended for everyone to learn it. I think the world could be a bit of a different place if we all knew how to speak with nonviolent communication.
And one of the things I became aware of when I was older was my dynamics around food. Foods can be a really complex one because our relationship with food is established at a really early age, in the first months of life. And food is used when we're growing up as for pleasure, for reward, for expressions of care by our caregivers. And then there's other dynamics like sugar hits and so forth. And I discovered that as an adult, one of the ways I was dealing with stress was by to stuff it down was to literally stuff. Because basically, one of the things with emotions is we need to energetically digest them to process the experience of the things that have happened to us in the day. And it's actually quite similar to eating. And in a certain way, we can put food in and use it to suppress how we're feeling emotionally because the body shifts gears when we have a meal, and it shifts into a digestive mode, and then the body is, we're more on the body and stuff, we get to enjoy the pleasures of the food or whatever like that. And so that we have now, an epidemic of obesity and food issues in North America. Partly that's dietary, but it's essentially diets that are chasing comfort food and sugar, basically as a way to distract. And we can actually get addicted to certain styles of food and sugar.
And it
And,
can be an addiction. It can be a trauma
yeah,
response.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so I discovered that unconsciously, one of the things I would do if I felt stressed was to go in the kitchen. And even though I was eating healthy and the food I had in the house was largely healthy, there was still too much of it. And so I started carrying more weight than I needed very gradually. And then it became harder to lose because I was eating more calories than I needed in my day. And so there's been the gradual process for me, of becoming more conscious of that, healing the emotions, and shifting my habit patterns around food, and partly becoming more conscious of it in the first place that helped, and then healing some of the dynamics around that. Although ironically, it's quite funny doing the somatic work helped me become more conscious of what's in there, but it also made me more conscious of what was not conscious before. And so I was noticing when it was burbling up more, and that was triggering my response to look for food. So making it, there's that kind of transition period there where you're in the healing process, but it's like it's triggering it's becoming more conscious, so it's triggering you more.
Well, going through the healing process can bring up a lot of emotions.
Yeah,
And I know personally too, I have gone for food when I need comfort. I have a bit of a sweet tooth sometimes. I'll be like, candy, I need candy. Yeah. So I understand. I
yeah,
think it happens to the best of us.
yeah. And it's like I mentioned, it's very common in our culture, and it is socially acceptable. There are certainly other kinds of addictive behaviors or stress response things that are not considered very acceptable in our culture, but food is one of them. Drinking is also generally considered acceptable. Uh,
And that's something I'm trying to do with my daughter too, is she's only 3, but I'm making sure like, oh, like if she's crying, I'm not going to be like, oh, and here's a popsicle. Here's some comfort food, right?
yeah,
Because I know what how that can impact her long term. So
yeah,
instead I'll be like, here's a hug.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Feel your emotions. I'll sit with you. Let's feel sad together.
yeah,
And it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to cry.
yeah.
And what is your intake on divine mercy? What do you believe that is?
Well, for me, divine mercy is more of a Christian term. Um,
Okay.
but I do use words like, for myself, I use words like compassion and And there's kind of like, for me, there's kind of like almost like levels with the heart. You could say that there's like there's human love and friendship and camaraderie. But there's a kind of a higher level of love and compassion that are more universal and that are without judgment or condition. Um, they're they're universal, and I think it's one thing that Christianity promotes is a more universal form of love, and where everybody is acceptable as they are. Everybody is included, and everybody has goodness within them, and we can look to that in our life and try and culture an attitude. So rather than being kind of the judgy, uh, dismissive that we talked about before, we look to people with compassion. And that's much easier to do if we're not judging them. Because even you can get kind of people who are like to think of themselves as supportive and so on like that, but they're still doing it through the lens of judgment, like I'm better than you, and so I can help you, um, as opposed to just a real compassion where we see who the person really is and we communicate like we were talking about and understand them, and then we can be there for them how we need to be for them.
Thank you. Personally, I believe divine mercy is God's love and compassion for all of humanity, especially in the face of human suffering. And it's a deep forgiveness for everyone. And it's a compassionate love and a love that we all need, because we all need love and we all need compassion.
Yeah.
We all need forgiveness. No one's perfect. I know
Yeah.
I'm far from perfect. So I'm very thankful for um forgiveness and mercy, right? Because yeah, if we didn't have that in the world, man,
No one put up with me then.
I know we'd all be doomed. So okay. And opening our hearts begins with and ends, I believe, with love and being vulnerable. And people can be terrified to open their hearts because they're so scared of getting hurt because they've been hurt in the past. And a lot of it is because it can come from developmental trauma. It can be because we were abused, we were cheated on, we were neglected, we were bullied. The list goes on, and we harden our hearts and we don't let people in. And it's really scary because we don't want to get hurt again. And I get that.
But if we can build our capacity, our container, so to speak, then we can open our hearts, and it's in a safe way because our hearts are in a bigger place, so to speak. And so the stuff we get back at us that's not so pleasant is smaller. And we have to remember too, because a lot of the stuff that we suppressed at a very young age, because it wasn't safe then. We didn't have the capacity. But we're adults now. We've had a lot of experiences and learned to grow, and our capacity is much larger. And when we bring that early stuff to the surface, it can be, it can make us really nervous and like, oh, this is scary stuff and that. But it's kind of like the boogeyman under the bed. When we're kids, we're afraid of, the dark and what's in the closet, monsters in the closet, whatever. Um, but if we have the larger capacity, we can see it. No, it's okay. It's not, the closet is safe. It's fine. There's no monsters under the bed. Maybe just some dust bunnies. But
Yes. And
but
it's feeling safe,
yeah,
right?
and so
It
this
is building baby steps with the capacity
exactly.
of feeling
So then
safe.
we're feeling safe, and so it increases our capacity. And then, at a certain point, we get to the point where the slings and arrows of life, so to speak, they don't hurt us that way anymore. Where they're just part of the process, part of life. And then we're able to hold that space, and then we're able to express that love and compassion, because we have that capacity to give. You know, if the well is dry, there's nothing to give. But if we're open and full, then we're able to give from that place.
So it's our healing ourselves and our
Yeah,
looking at our wounds and
yeah.
exploring them and becoming curious.
A lot of people will find they actually have almost like a crust on their heart that's, it's been encased away in this energetic box just to try and be safe. And so there can be a kind of a breaking down, a breaking open, and to come out of the closet, so to speak, and out of the box, and so that love can flow, and we can be there for ourselves and for others, as well.
I believe it's also very common in marriages, and it could be a reason why so many marriages are not working out, and end in divorce.
But just like I talked about in my family, you can end up falling into habits in your relationships, and unless you stop and notice, we're just kind of like, you know, one of them becomes a nag, and the other one just tunes it out, and you get into these habits of relating to each other, and we don't hear anymore because we're not listening, or we talk without actually connecting, because we put up walls of resistance between us, and it takes two to tango, so to speak. Uh, you need to be able to stop and look and listen sometimes, or it just there's nothing there to support the relationship, because it is a relationship. So where's the relationship if there's no back and forth?
And it's being grateful for the little moments and noticing the little moments, because we tend to focus on all the bad, all the negative,
Yeah,
especially in relationships.
yeah,
We really need to notice the moments
yeah.
of compassion and kindness and love
We
towards
forget.
the other person and be able to receive it.
Yeah,
And my best friend, Courtney, she calls God loves me moments. You may call him God or divine um, moments. It may be moments that you see a rainbow or a beautiful sunset. And I invite you, when you do this, when you're seeing this, to notice that space in your heart and notice all aspects of it and just feel it in the heart.
well, synchronicities in life too, where you just feel like things work out. It's useful to pause and just cherish that moment for a moment. Experience the gratitude of that experience.
And allow yourself to be seen and heard, and allow yourself to be authentic,
Yes.
your
Be true to
core.
yourself. Yeah.
And sometimes that takes time to even know who we are, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And embodied processing can help with that. I know it's helped me learn and grow.
Yeah.
So, and I have a lot more growing to do. I have a lot more learning to do. Don't get me wrong. I do. I have a lot more to grow. But embodied processing has helped me learn and grow. And I continue to learn and grow because it gives you deep reflection.
Yes, I agree, and I'm same experience here. And I'm in my 70s, and I'm still growing up.
And if somebody's kind and compassionate to you, notice that in your heart space. And I just encourage you to notice all aspects of it. And if you're feeling lots of emotions could come up, you may be feeling anxious about it. You may be feeling peace or joy or anger or grief or sadness. It may be triggering you, but notice all aspects of it and become curious about it and start to reflect on it and sit with it and just start to really feel all emotions. Feel all of it.
Yeah.
If
As
a
best
child, sorry, go ahead.
as best we can.
As best as we can. Exactly. And if a child gives you a hug, or someone smiles at you, or a friend reaches out, or a person gives you a kind word, or an act of kindness, try and notice this as best as you can in your heart space. And notice where it arises. Notice how it impacts you. And it's small acts of kindness that can impact us so much and can impact the world. And even if it's like, even if you're like suspicious of the person, like, what do you want from me? Or what, like, yes, what do you want from me? Like, why are you being nice to me? Are you like, do you want a ride? Do you want money? Do you want, notice it, accept all of it, and just become curious with it. There's no bad emotion. What's your intake on that, David?
Yes, I fully agree. Yeah, because it's basically it's like the emotion is like a flow of energy. And if we try and suppress it or whatever, it gets in the way and it's not processed. It doesn't complete. And then what happens is we're pushing it back inside of ourselves. So it sits in there looking for an opportunity to complete. And so it's like, having a bunch of food in there that we're not digesting, it just causes trouble. And so, and that's essentially what we're talking about here is digesting all those old emotions that we repressed before. Because if we don't do that, then it just sits in there and causes troubles. And it'll cause, you got all this push down anger or sadness or whatever it is that's in there, and you hold it in there for 30 years. What's going to happen to your health? It'll catch up with you one day. So it's really valuable to take care of this stuff, not just for your health, but your quality of life. Because then when you don't have this crust and suppression and all this kind of stuff in there, you can just freely express your emotions. Your life becomes much nicer.
And speak your truth. Be your
Yeah.
authentic self. Don't repress anything. Allow yourself to speak and be your authentic self. And when you're authentic self, you're going to be able to attract those that truly connect with you
Yes.
and you with them. You're going to find your people,
Find your tribe.
right?
Yes.
Your tribe. Exactly. You're a part of my tribe, David. In exploring our wounds, if you're being triggered, become curious, right? Relationships are a place of healing, and it's also a place to grow.
Yes. Relationships can be mirrors for our stuff. And it's one of the reasons why people get challenged in relationships is because they reflect back to us our unresolved material. So if we're not dealing with this stuff, then we can find relationships unpleasant and that can be triggering and blah, 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 blah. But if we are doing the work, then relationships can be really valuable because they can show us our stuff and allow us, see where we need to heal and allow us to make it all more conscious and heal it. And so they actually improve our quality of life in that process.
And I also invite you to become aware of your critical thinking of ourselves and others, because so often we're not even fully aware of our own thoughts. And if we constantly keep on thinking the same thoughts, it can impact our emotions. And both emotions and our thoughts cause our reason.
Yeah.
And our thoughts aren't always true and accurate. So when you're thinking thoughts, ask, is this true? Is this a fact? And become aware of your limited beliefs. So if you feel I'm not worthy of love, I'm not good enough, I feel a lot of shame, I don't deserve to be loved. Notice these thought patterns, and I encourage you to write them down and ask yourself, why? And would you be telling your best friend this? And I invite you to encourage you to explore this with a somatic practitioner. And just become aware of your judgmental thoughts towards yourself and others.
Yeah, we need compassion too, not just our friends and family, but
It's true. And I guarantee you,
ourselves.
a lot of these thoughts are coming from society or someone else. And become curious. Who are these thoughts? Who does this sound like? Is it coming from a parent? A guardian? Lots of times it does come from our childhood. And just start to become curious with it.
Could be just some bully in the playground.
It could be some bully in the playground, not necessarily our parents,
Yeah. And
right?
what does he know about us, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. The bully is probably needing to work through their own stuff,
Exactly.
right? They're not bullying for no reason at all. And often we see other people's walls much easier than we can see into our own emotional walls. And it's really important when we're not the opposite end of someone's wall to hold space, be patient, and know if you're going to be in it, you're going to be in it for the long haul because it doesn't happen overnight. And you need to know that if you're going to be on board. And we need to be able
So
to
often,
create, sorry?
yeah, so often their triggers too are nothing to do with you. And
That's
so
a
we
good point.
can, we can take, someone gets triggered and we can take it personally, but really it's their stuff that's been triggered. And so it's their stuff to heal. It's not ours to deal with. 'Cause we don't have to fix them or we don't have to help them heal. They need to do this process themselves so they can actually heal this stuff.
And people don't need fixing, they need healing. And
Yeah.
it's also really important to meet a person where they're at and to go through their door, not yours. And this all takes time. So if this is, for example, a spouse that has put up an emotional wall, make sure you're doing the self-care. Make sure you have your support group behind you because it's going to take it takes a long time, but it's creating a safe place,
But
a place of
if they're willing to do the work and to help with the relationship, and if it's beneficial for them, they're going to see the value. And it takes a while. There's no quick fixes here to really do this healing, but it's progressive. And so as we do the work, the quality of life improves, the quality of relationships improves, the quality of our interactions. It all you can see the benefits um, quite quickly because some of this stuff, when we clear some of the stuff, it goes deep, right? Right back. I mean, I've been in a couple of sessions with embodied processing where I went back into precognitive childhood around age 1.5 or 2 years old, where your experience of being is quite different. You're not in the cognitive mind part yet that you develop, as you approach school age. It's just this kind of you're like this ball of emotion and feeling. Um, and so when we heal stuff right back in those early days, because now we can bring an adult perspective to it, it can change our whole relationship with so many things in our lives, and it can make large rippling out effects in our quality of life. So yeah, the work is really
huge impact. Opening our heart in it, not only our own life, but those around us. And
yes.
it does have a rippling effect that can impact the world. And then there's the 5 love languages. Are you familiar with the 5 love languages, David?
No, I don't think so.
No? Okay. Everyone can receive love differently. And
Oh, you're
for
talking
example,
about love languages?
yes.
Oh, yes, I'm familiar with those, yes.
Okay. So would you like to name the 5 love languages?
Well, one of them is gift giving. As you mentioned, touch. This isn't
Words of
yes,
affirmation,
words of affirmation. Um,
time,
yes, quality time,
and acts of service.
acts of
And
service. Yeah,
looking through a trauma informed lens.
yeah.
When
That,
sometimes
I just wanted to say that was really valuable for me to understand. I learned them after my marriage ended, unfortunately, because I realized that there was a disconnect between us that way, and neither of us was conscious of it, so we didn't know how to ask for what we wanted. I was giving her gifts and doing acts of service like, leveling the backyard and putting in raised beds. And for her, quality time was the most important. And, you know, so rather than having quality time, I'm out in the yard, you know, doing digging and building and stuff um, for her and us. But that was not how she experienced it. She experienced it as, not having quality time. And I think if she was more conscious of that, then she probably would have been there with me more in the yard. Um, or we just would have organized it differently and we could have supported the relationship much better.
thank you. Yes, I agree. And that's a really good example. And even going a step further and looking through the trauma informed lens, sometimes certain acts of love can actually even trigger us. So it's maybe even exploring if certain acts of love can trigger us and what we're more comfortable with. And if we have a hard time receiving love, maybe there's one love language that we may be even a little bit more comfortable with receiving or giving. And that's a good place to start. And I'd also encourage you to make a small list of people, even starting with one person that you feel safe with, and try and spend time with them and build on to 2 people, to 3 people, and building on very slowly, very slowly. And if sometimes we don't feel comfortable or safe with people, starting with, like we discussed with Matt's interview, could be God. You may like to call him the divine. It could be an animal. Whatever is safe. Start off that and very slowly letting yourself set your own pace, build on to that list. And Dr. Conrad Burns, he said, if a person can realize their inner goodness, their inner worth, how lovable they are, and how much worth they have as a human, that can draw goodness and it can draw virtue. Yeah. And spend time with the people who nurture you and are not critical, people who are healthy for you to be with. Take time to really explore this in an EP session, to reflect on forgiveness. Forgiveness for ourselves. And that's something personally I've struggled with different times in my life is forgiving someone. And I remember I was not going up for communion for quite a while because I was having a hard time forgiving someone. And my priest came to me and he said, Erin, why are you not coming up for communion? Like it was a very long time. It wasn't just 1 week. And I said, well, I'm having a hard time forgiving someone. And he said, as long as you don't wish them harm and you wish the best for them, and you want to forgive them, that's a step. And I was able to receive communion. And it's taking baby steps because it's also feeling it in our body, right? And I believe forgiveness, just like healing, is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. You just don't say, okay, I forgive, right? It takes time.
Yeah. And
And
forgiveness isn't something you do directly like that in that kind of circumstance. It's something that comes out of healing what happened.
Exactly. And
Then it
processing all our emotions, our
yeah,
anger, our pain, everything. We need to feel it.
yeah.
We need to allow it.
If we go
And
straight to
don't push it down.
forgiveness, if we go
Just
straight to forgiveness, we're just going to struggle.
exactly. We need to feel it on our heart. It's not like I forgive. It's I feel it in my heart. I forgive you. I understand you. I feel compassion, right? You're
Yeah,
my brother or you're my sister, or you're my neighbor, you're my friend, whatever you want to call it. But it's a process. And one day you may feel a lot of anger. And the next day you may feel, oh, I forgive this person. And the next day you may feel pain. And it's just like healing trauma. It's a journey. And every day we may feel a little bit different. And it takes steps. It's gradual and it cannot be rushed. It cannot be pressured. You cannot pressure someone to forgive you. It takes time. It takes compassion. It takes respect. It takes time, space, and you just need to allow the journey.
yeah, and people have all kinds of other stuff going on in their lives at the same time. So that it'll be in, little moments here and there where people have the opportunity to reflect and to feel and to work through whatever's there.
And this doesn't mean allowing boundaries to come down. Like if
Right.
you need space for emotional well-being, then you need to take it. If you need space, if you're not safe, then you need to take it.
Yeah.
That's critical.
Yeah.
Um,
But you can still resolve the undigested material from the experience or whatever triggered that in the first place. Doesn't mean you need to go and be with them or let them back into your life if that's not appropriate. This doesn't mean we don't discriminate
exactly.
and distinguish what's healthy and so on like that. It just means we put down the load because so often people end up carrying these loads of, I'm never going to forgive such and such for whatever they did to me, when it's us that's doing it to ourselves. We're not hurting them by not forgiving them. We're hurting ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. Um, and if you pray, if you're a person of prayer, pray for an open heart. Pray for your loved ones, your friends, your family, that their heart may be softened. And it's so important to accept people fully, and accept them as their authentic self. Don't try and change them. Don't try and fix them. Just accept them for who they are and meet them where they are. And sometimes when a person's feeling kind, showing kindness and love and compassion, it can be a trigger for us. And I encourage you to continue to show them compassion, kindness, but giving them that space, giving them that respect, and
Right.
just, yeah,
Yeah. And I've done exercises where we compared giving and receiving too. And what I've seen is that we can be very good some people are very good at giving, at supporting others and that kind of stuff, but maybe have walls up about actually receiving, really. And you can see it in people when you compliment them or thank them, and they'll kind of dismiss it and oh, it's nothing, um, and they're not able to accept it, especially if they have something dynamic around self-worth in there. That then uh, receiving thanks means that it conflicts with our sense of our negative sense of self-worth, and so they can't feel comfortable with accepting it. So and we reflect it on ourselves, we can see where sometimes we have some healing to do around that.
I agree. And can you imagine a world that everyone lives with a soft heart, a compassionate and mindful heart?
And the thing is, it doesn't take that much. It just takes a little time and patience with ourselves and to heal our past so that we can be here fully in the present and enjoy our lives.
And David, what would you like your legacy to be?
A legacy, goodness. Well, I hope that some of the work I do carries forward. That there's people can feel supported on their journeys, and yeah, I guess to be remembered that way.
And what advice do you have for everyone?
Be kind to yourself, and then you can be kind to others when you're kind to yourself.
Yes, show yourself self-compassion and self-care,
Yes.
and take baby steps along the way. Thank you so much. And it's even taking baby steps, even 1% a day to open your heart. 1% every
1%
day.
means in 3 months you've got 100%.
And imagine how much that could impact you and everyone around you. And like you said, David, earlier in the interview, it would have a ripple effect. So let's move forward and reflect on how we can soften our own heart towards ourselves, our community, our friends, our family, and the world. Thank you so much for joining. It was an honor to have you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Erin.